We live in momentous times, quite frightening times. And you don't need me to tell you that we're having a general election soon. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I would keep a diary of events as they unfold in the run-up to that election, which might be one of the most important general elections in our history. Because I just wanted to capture my thoughts and my reaction, to look back and think, I was right. Or not. But it'd be interesting to see, as a student of history, we can see it unfolding before our eyes, and that's interesting, quite frightening. When I used to do historical research a few years ago, we talked a lot about the difference between what is happening and what is going on. So what is happening are the events. What is going on is the sort of deeper shifts and changes over periods, fundamental sort of ground shifting stuff. And what I'm really interested in with this election particularly is the difference between what is happening rather than an election and what is going on. Because what is going on, as far as I'm concerned, or as what I can see, is a seizure of power by the far right. And I can see them attaining a dominant position in politics that they won't lose, probably in my lifetime. Which has many connotations for my life and the life of my family and friends, and the nation as a whole. Having studied seizures of power by the right and left, I think there are broadly three key conditions that need to be in place before these things can happen. I'll just go through them. The first one is there needs to be a crisis, because crises make people nervous. They make people more conservative in terms of what they are willing to risk, and it makes people think that security and safety are more important than protecting things like freedom of speech and democracy. And the crisis at the moment, obviously Brexit and the possible future, ever is a bit uncertain, the threat of terrorism, which is around every corner, apparently. Or just on that particular, actually, the threat of violence, we are less likely today to die a violent death than any other time in our history. We've always had to have a bogeyman. Throughout my life it's been communists, then it was Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, now it's ISIL and the terrorists, and any nutter who kills somebody is immediately a terrorist, and it might not be terrorism. Anyway, so that's the crisis. The crisis also involves scapegoating, because we need somebody to blame if things are going wrong. It's human nature. Who do we blame? Member of a group of people in society, certain type of workers, certain type of people, different races, different religions, other are to blame. And unless somebody protects us from them, they will get us, and they will ruin our lives, and so on and so forth. The second condition, in addition to the crisis, is a very powerful message delivered by a very strong media. Now, if you think about our media today, we have more media than anybody else has ever had in history. We are bombarded on a second by second basis by our media. I don't do Twitter, that's why I'm doing this. But people do, and people do Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and and you get 24-hour rolling news on the TV, and then you get text alerts when anything happens and blah, and it's just constant bombardment. And that has two effects. One is that it means that sound bites become more powerful, they spread quicker. So things like, oh yeah, we're taking back control, become common currency, despite the fact they don't really mean anything. And the second thing is people just get sick of it. People get fed up. And that leads us into the third condition, which is a society that is ready and willing to accept a seizure of power because it's better than having to cope with the rest of the rubbish that's thrown at you. And I think our society at the moment is thoroughly sick of politics. They're sick of the whole Brexit thing, they're sick of politicians, they're sick of the 24-hour news, yada yada yada. They're sick of everything and they just want it to go away. And that's going to make people either not vote or just vote for Theresa May to get the whole thing shut up, fed up, end of. The other part of society being ready for it is to do with process and people being willing to carry out process without question. Now, I've noticed in the last 10, 15 years there's been an acute rise in management culture in our society. And it's the way in which people have been squeezed to get more for less, because that's something that has happened a lot recently. People having to work harder and get paid less, broadly speaking, across our economy. And that's down to management culture, which gets people to do processes and follow protocols and pathways rather than deal with things on an individual basis, because individual basis is costly, it's less efficient, and it doesn't empower the manager. So people in work, for example in the civil service, this is your pathway, you follow it. So and so presents with X, you do Y, Z, blah blah, there you go, thank you very much. Don't think about it. Okay. Anybody's seen the film Daniel Blake, I, Daniel Blake, recently, very powerful, very, very clever film. Everybody in the job centre was doing the protocol. This is what we do. The lady who tried to help him was told off by a manager. And that kind of processing mentality is very important to a seizure of power. And if you look at how the communists seized power in Soviet Russia, a lot of that was to do with kind of this bureaucratic list compiling without thinking about what they were doing or what the consequences of it. Similarly with the Nazis and the Holocaust, or Pol Pot and killing fields, it was all about process and doing as you were told. A sort of addenda to the management culture is the rise of the individual agenda. Managers are careerists by and large. They go into management to further their careers, and their careers come first. And I've known a lot of managers who will subvert whole organisations for their own agenda. Politicians obviously do this, Michael Gove, Jeremy Hunt, but also people at a lower level will do the same. And if you look at, say, the Nazi state and the rise of the SS, that was a classic example of management culture gone mad and people working to their own agendas, for their own advancement, who would then shift the whole organisation around to serve their own interest. And I think that might be quite a key ingredient in what's going to happen in Britain over the next few weeks. So there we are. That's what I think. I just put it out there. And I might see you tomorrow.